Hi and welcome to our next tutorial using Tinkercad. In this Tinkercad video, we're going to take a look at something new, and that is using input with our Arduino board. In this case here, we are going to use a push button. So if you take a look at our circuit on our circuit board, we have a push button circuit here. And note the way that it's wired. We've got 5 volts coming from this here to one side of the switch. On the other side of the switch, we've got a resistor here. This is a 10K ohm resistor connected to ground. What's very important with input signals is making sure that if it's a digital input, then it has to be either a 0 or a 1, or it has to be 0 volts or 5 volts. And in order to make sure that that happens, we're going to put in this resistor here. And the way it works is if this push button is not pushed, then this will be at 0 volts. In other words, no current will flow here. This is ground here. This is 0 volts, and that means no current flows. This is 0 volts at this point here. When I push this push button, what will happen is this will complete the circuit and current will flow. That means that at this point here on this side of the resistor, this will be 0 volts, but since I'm pushing the push button, then there must be a voltage drop across this resistor here, and this point here will be 5 volts. So if I show you with the push button, when I'm pushing, I'm getting 5 volts, and when I let go, it drops down to 0 volts. So from there, this row on the circuit board, I'm sending an input signal to pin or port 2 on the Arduino board, and I have to tell the Arduino that I want to accept an input to port 2, and that's what I'm doing here with my pin mode statement. I'm telling port 2 I want that to be an input, and that's going to be created here in void setup. Using that input, I'm going to drive this LED here. So remember, for any LED circuit, I need a resistor in series. I use 220 ohms, and I need to set an output with my Arduino board to drive that LED. I'm going to do that through pin 13, and I show that in void setup here with pin mode 13, and I'm setting that port to an output port. That's the way the hardware works in this circuit. Let's take a look at void loop and what's inside here. We have created a variable in this case here, and I've defined that at the top, and I'm going to call it an integer. It's a button state. The button state is either 0 or it's a 1. I'm going to set its initial value to 0. What happens inside the loop here is it will constantly check this port 2 and see what is at that port. So we're doing a digital read. We're reading the digital value of that port 2, and whatever it is, we are going to put it into button state, the variable. Then we're going to create an if else statement here, and the way it looks in Arduino is if the button state is equal to 1, notice the 2 equal signs here, then in brackets here we are going to do something. We are going to do a digital write command. In other words, we're going to set port 13 to high, or 5 volts. If that's not true, we're going to go to else, and we are going to do a digital write to port 13, and we're going to put it as low, or 0 volts. In other words, not turn on the LED. So that's it in terms of how the code works. You are going to build this circuit, except make a couple modifications. One thing is I want you to drive the port 4 with the push button instead of port 2, so I want you to make that change. I do want you to build everything else here the same. So use port 4 as the input, and then I want you to make an additional circuit over here showing that if the push button is not pushed, we'll have a green LED on. If it is pushed, the green LED will turn off and the red LED turns on. So add an LED circuit up here showing that when it's not pushed it's green, and when it is pushed this LED should be on. That's it for this tutorial. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.